It's been a huge week in the United States with new information coming to light about the First family and allegations of corruption. The story was broken by Australian journalist Miranda Devine in the New York Post, the same newspaper and reporter who broke the Hunter Biden laptop story that the rest of the media ignored and social media suppressed prior to the 2020 presidential elections. On Sunday, the newspaper published a story telling how Hunter would dial his father into meetings with his business partners overseas while his father was Vice President of the United States under Obama. The claims are reportedly expected to be made publicly by Hunter's ex-mate, Devon Archer, who's scheduled to testify to a congressional committee. The really concerning bit about all this is this. The New York Post reports that one of these meetings, where Vice President Biden was dialed in by Hunter, took place in Dubai late one December evening in 2015 after a board meeting of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. Ah yes, the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. That's the mob who were paying Hunter $1 million a year to be a director on their board, despite Hunter having no experience in the energy sector whatsoever. Devon Archer was also a director of Burisma. Amazing. And the Post says that he is expected to testify that after dinner with the Burisma board, he and Hunter went to another hotel in Dubai for a drink and got a call from a top Burisma executive saying that Burisma's owner, Mykola Zlochevsky, needed to speak to Hunter urgently. Soon afterward, the New York Post report says the two Ukrainians showed up and the exec asked Hunter, "Can you ring your dad?" Hunter then called his father, put him on speaker, placed the phone on the table and introduced the Ukrainians to Joe Biden by name as Nikolai and Vadim. He also said words to the effect that the Burisma bigwigs need our support. Now, all of this sounds sort of bad, but it's even worse. The context is this. 3 days after the speakerphone call, Joe Biden, who was Obama's point man for Ukraine, was due to fly to Kiev to address the Ukrainian parliament about the evils of corruption and kleptocracy. A few months earlier, the US ambassador had given a speech about corruption and mentioned the Burisma owner, Zlochevsky, by name. So the thinking is maybe this was why he was freaked out and why he wanted to speak to Biden before his speech. Please don't mention me by name. Now, why does that matter, apart from the obvious inappropriateness and conflict of interest? Well, because back then, the man who was the Ukrainian prosecutor general, Viktor Shokin, was investigating Burisma for corruption, and he was hitting the company really hard. But a month later, Shokin was fired after Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in US aid to Ukraine if he wasn't fired. Let me just repeat that because it's the crux of the whole thing. So Shokin, the Ukrainian special prosecutor, was investigating Zlochevsky, the guy who owned the energy company Burisma, for corruption. Hunter Biden was strangely a director on the Burisma board, being paid $1 million a year, and then Joe Biden had Shokin, the investigator, fired by threatening to withhold $1 billion in US aid to Ukraine if he wasn't fired. Wow. Biden even bragged about it publicly on stage at an event right after.
I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Now, none of this part is actually new. We knew all of this and we reported on it before the 2020 presidential election on this show in 2020. Now, Biden's story was that the prosecutor himself was corrupt and was unjustly going after the Burisma founder. But even if that was the case, it doesn't explain Hunter's involvement and the board position. But nobody really cared about all this back then, even though it was known. Almost everyone else in the Aussie media and 90% of the US media was too busy hating Donald Trump and making sure that Biden would become president. They didn't bother reporting on this situation.